I'm a worker poet. My poetry begins at 4 in the morning and ends at 6 at night. I'm a worker poet, forged in the noise and creaking of machines.
I think working class culture is the expression of the most exploited people about how they see themselves, how they see their situation. And in a way they're beginning to make images about themselves which contradicts the usual images of workers which we see in the dominant culture. Always workers are seen in the back seat and lacking initiative. But working class culture actually gets to grips with the real issues in workers' lives, get to grips with the way workers are addressing their situation, and shows that workers are a major force in our society, and that workers are working to change the society and to change the relations between people. At the first level, workers are dealing with their own immediate issues, a particular strike, a particular struggle, and they're trying to take that message out to wider layers, to the community, to gain support for that particular struggle. At another level, workers are dealing with the broad policies of COSATU and beginning to tell the community what democratic trade unionism is all about, taking a message to unorganized workers that progressive trade unions is the weapon to use to change the conditions of exploitation which they face. But I think there's even a bigger message coming from workers, and that is that we want to see a new society, and a new society which actually gives credit to workers for the important contribution they're making, and that we should work now to build a new society in which people would relate differently. There wouldn't be oppression and exploitation.
We are fighting for rights in this land. We fighting for democracy. We are fighting for our freedom forever and evermore. We are fighting for our freedom forever and evermore. We shall not be moved away. In our land, solidarity. We shall not be moved away. In our land, solidarity. To be united, to be strong, a luta continua. To be united, to be strong, a luta continua. Ziya, ambana leliso, sofuna umaegiso. Ziya. siyafuna umayekiso. Siyamthola, siyamthola, siyamthola ngalelusa. Siyamthola, siyamthola, siyamthola ngalelusa. Buya, yokala abaqashi, ukale na yukota. Buya, yokala abaqashi, ukale na yukota. Bayokala, bayokala, bakalela uMandela. Bayokala, bayokala, bakalela neCOSATU. Thina bantwana beNdumsa, sizonqoba sesimunye. Thina bantwana beNdumsa, sizonqoba sesimunye. Sithi buya, mayibuye iAfrika. Sithi buya, mayibuye iAfrika.
When you sing this song, it has an appeal to the majority of the people. It can be easily grasped and understood by the people of that situation, because it does not just talk about personal life of the person who sings it or recite the poem, but it talks about the experiences of the majority of the people under repression and exploitation. When people come together, workers come together in a congress, for instance, those different traditions from African traditional ways of life, wherever they come from, they interact with the present situation of exploitation and repression in South Africa, which is forced upon us by this capitalism. And out of that new surrounding, a new culture emerges, which we call today working class culture. We are now calling and claiming our own heritage. We are now saying this is working class culture, and it has to come back and feed and promote the working class politics, chiefly working class politics under organized labor movements like COSATU.
The growth of COSATU from the late 70s provided the organizational base for the beginnings of a working class culture. One of the worker movement's first popular poets was a worker from Dunlop in Durban, Alfred Kabula.
Masebenzi ngubani nalo maye nikhalenze ngubani nalo lihluphayo balekelani kulelo hlathi ihlathi elimnyama labona ngabaqashi balibalekela imvukuzane eyabona zimpimpi zabaqashi iza kancane ngomgwaqo iphikelele ngasezibonini sagijima zatshela abaqashi zathi basi thina bukile lo mvukuzane buya lo side lo factory yathina. Wakhala umqashi wathi, hey, my boy, what is a mvukuzane? Mvukuzane, it's one of COSATU's union. Muhle muntu, mina zakhela wena 6-room house lapha, homeland ka wena. Thatha nakulo machine gun. Vala lo gate. Lo skhathi wena buka yena, bulala yena. Lo skhathi lo union ngena lo site la factory kathina. Yena azothatha zonke lo mashares nika lo basebenzi. Biva umsebenzi.
Kabula's performances were an example to other workers. Malizi Nyogantanzi, who works at KwaSithebe in KwaZulu, had always recited traditional poetry. but his experiences as a worker transformed his poetry.
Ngale ngesikhathi la sine general meeting la eCarls Fountain la ngabona khona uqabulu wasethi nase sine general meeting eGoli ngase ngiqala ke namthi ngenze ngoba ngabona ukuthi kuyangena kulezi abasebenzi izinto ezifana nalezi ngase ngiyeka lezi zaKwaZulu ngoba ngibona ukuthi ayifiti kakhulu ngapha lokho kulezi abasebenzi iKwaZulu yodwa ngoba izinto zaKwaZulu zizodwa ngapho basebenzi lomzabalazo abasebenzi ngoba kwaZulu nje la ngeke uwenze into yaKwaZulu la imisebenzi usoyenza imisebenzi manje basebenzi babengahambisani nalokho kwase kuba ngiphoqa ukuthi ngifuna izinkonzo eziqonde nomzabalazo kodwa kuphela.
Khawusa umzomkhulu wabasebenzi, khawusa umkhulu ngoba udide ubhoda ehlele esihlalweni, wadida ngisho nezingcelebane kabhoda, wadida ngisho umsheshelengana bakabhoda, wadida ngisho nezimakwane kabhoda, wadida ngisho noRegrans uqobo, wadida ngisho namabhunukazi akhe ubhoda. La ngibone khona khawusa ukuthi umkhulu, ngikubone ubamba isiteleka sakho kwazama zama umhlaba kwathula khawusa.
Umkhulu bakho khawusa ngibone ukakazela uPicket Bay layezwa isiteleka za-okay enqoba u-okay wathi uPicket Bay hayi ngiyawesaba khawusa wathi woza khawule khawusa. No, I give you all you need. I give you May 1. I give you June 16, public holiday. I give you 100 grand. I want to quarrel with you, Kausa.
Workers from the rural areas of Southern Africa bring a range of traditional influences into the culture of South Africa's working class.
Workers have been controlled mainly through the migrant labor system, which controls their movement from the rural areas to the mines, and then control their stay at the mine through the form of hostels and dunas and so on. And culturally, management have always attempted, even up to today, to place workers in hostels along ethnic lines, and have then encouraged those so-called ethnic groupings to develop certain organizational forms through which they can express that culture.
It's an expression of the natural culture of these tribes, and it's sort of seeing the African as an unspoiled person instead of being Europeanized.
I like it. I like the beat. The beat.
You like the beat?
Yeah. It's the best free entertainment you can get in the world.
Have encouraged these groups by arranging competitions between mines to carry on with, say, Zulu tribal dance competitions, etc. And it's only now that we are seeing workers beginning to break out of that controlled form of culture. And what we are definitely encouraging is that workers must produce their cultural activities as mine workers and not as Zulu mine workers or as Sotho mine workers. We believe that what unites workers are much more than what divides them. And even those ethnic differences that may exist have always been overemphasized by management, and we believe that what is emerging now is a workers' culture and not an ethnic culture in any way.
With South Africa's broadcast media under strict state control, most cultural forms, even popular music, are restricted by the workings of the South African system. But culture in a revolutionary situation finds other outlets. The militant culture of the youth that swept the country with the uprisings of 1984 to 86 was the beginning of an ongoing challenge to all forms of control. COSATU workers, building on the gains of the youth, fought a series of strikes that have inspired a surge of cultural production. When Clover Dairies fired 168 workers in June 1986, workers told the story of their strike in a play.
Most of our struggles have often involved a dismissal at some stage, and I think many of our most noted plays produced in the labor movement have come from that situation. In that period, workers have again organized and said, what can we do to build a struggle? What can we do in this time which we have while we're dismissed to reach out to other people and let them know about the exploitation we're facing and the kind of struggles we are waging.
My people, I've heard your cry, and how do you stop us from this brutality of these capitalists? Comrade, our hardship shall never end. The only solution is to join the union. We must join the union. No, boss. I was not talking. I was trying to tell my brother to help me to take this instead of Comrade, we must join the union. Now is the time we must join the union. Join us. Hey, join us. Hey, join us. Hey, join us. Hey, join us. Hey,
meeting njengamanje la eplatform, okay? I'm happy to see my workers
smiling like this. I want to tell you the law of this company. Ningasabanga tenkafanele yasemakhabonyo. Naniwazi umthetho wenkapani.
Viva msebenzi, viva! Viva! Viva msebenzi, viva! Viva! Africa! Mayibuye! Africa! Mayibuye! Amandla! Away! Is this the way how you make your meetings?
Umini manager la.
To say that a manager means nothing, you must respect the structures.
Umini manager la.
You cannot make the meeting without consulting us shop stewards.
Umini manager la.
This is high time now you know about democracy in South Africa. Let's go back to work.
Stop! Come here. Come here. Maybe it's the meeting. Yabasebenzi. I just step at the meeting. Ngakho-ke kusukela njengamanje umsebenzi uyaphelele. Kusuka lokho phansi ijoba bayaqala abasebenzi.
Sasifuna ukuthi kwazi umphakathi ukuthi isimo esaxoshwa ngaso nanokuthi kufunakala kubonakale indlela ukuthi saphuma kanjani. Sakubona ukuchitha isikhathi ukuthi saka ama sticker nama pamphlet ngani ngoba ma kukhona ipamphlet awunakubuza kumuntu kungcono ma kuyiplay uyakwazi ukuthi ofuna ukwazi umchazisele kabanzi.
Even if other critics outside will say the play or the poem is a flop, it is in actual not a flop because it has been able to stimulate. It has gone through the process which are controlled by the shop floor workers, which is the greatest principle which has made COSATU to what COSATU is today. That principle of worker democracy. Even during its formation, there are steps that are taken which are linked directly to the workers at shop floor. And they give it also a mandate. Then there is a workshop with those comrades which are appointed to take part in that workshop.
Qonda, a play by 3 COSATU workers from Durban, is a reaction to activities of right-wing vigilantes in Natal townships.
I hate Okoda. I'm so sick of it. these are the people that must join him. These are my friends of all.
Yeah, abangani bakho. Yeah.
Ready for what? Ubani. Hayi. Sobe. Hayi, ungangithatha usayithe. Sobe X. Khala.
Abantu abaningi njengoba sebejoyina ama-vigilante hayi ngoba bethanda abanye bajoyiniswa ngenkani ngokuthi futhi uhlele endlini unika umshiza kuthiwa aphuma kuhambe uyoshaya abantu ungazi ukuthi abantu uyokwenzani lapho kulapho okwenzeka khona ukuthi abantu kuze kubona ngathi amabutho maningi mhlawumbe mabili mathathu okubona abamabutho kodwa iningi labo abantu abangathandi ukuyoshaya abantu
yithi ngapha nithi sinkathazo phela inganje yidwafu yithi kuthi kushaya uAugustina lo siya kuyena ngoba secacile ngoba secacile ngoba phela uyabona thina sincindile saqada ngizwa ngithini base sishayela sikalidlanga la sizophela sicina sibamba phela siyidudule sishonse ngala ungacela ngazi phela ufonakele hayi hey umadoda angathili isikhathi hayi nami ilanga hayi kumnandi yabona lahle kunina manje ake ngazi ake ngizwe lokuwethu nilephi nina phela uyazi awuboni kahle la mnyango kulengo ongaqonde kahle abanye ngiyabona ukuthi niyasebenza abasebenzi kepha nilephi hayi mina ngisendaweni ephephile phela peaceful movement uCOSATU sasha uyabona kunina seshile Zilima seshile yini kanye impela la besifuna uqala kunina siklina ngoba lula hayisela kube lula zokhaqelula impela ungachithela isikhathi sakho angikho lapho ngizokhaqela uvela uchithela insizwa la awungitshela siyacabanga ukuthi singase mhlambe in future siyithola inkinga ngoba lento le asikhulumi ngento mhlambe engekho nje ngathi khuluma into eyenzekayo so angayasikwazi ngengikwazi ukubeka kakhulu ukuthi yini sesayinkinga sesahlangabezana nayo kodwa into esibona la ukuthi ya inkinga yona into esingase sibe nayo yabona abantu bona abama-vigilante most of them ma neighbors yabo and bazi ukuthi si amalungu enhlangano njengoba uCOSATU labo and kube bazameke attack ngalo ndlela ukuthi samalunga elokhuzana COSATU kodwa bebengakho awe ukuthi sekhona into enje ngalena edlalayo ekhuluma ngabo sakhuluma indaba omunye ngakhuluma omunye la ngizonye nelingaziyenza siqhubeke futhi ngiyifuna ingazazo lezi zinto lezi damn lazonge ngiyafaseleni hayi shit go vula wasibuza bani wasibuza thina yini wena khuluma nabo bethela sobantu speak English khuluma nabo hey kosa kusiza lekade sifuna umono lekade huyela hayi osala lona sizomfaka emselezo let's spend the house first Basha Father is some of the petrol board is after today.
The murder of leading Samco strikers Simon Ngubane and Ziya by vigilantes was a blow to working class culture. These comrades had been central to the development of co-ops and a play about the Samco struggle.
Workers, why don't you go back to work? Why? No reply, no work. No reply, no work. Oh shit! It's got a problem again. What must I do?
Dismissed workers started cooperatives that printed T-shirts, cultivated crops, and popularized their strike in the play called The Long March.
Maggie, you are wrong. You are wrong. Politics and economics is one and the same thing. I told you that before. Each time we talk about democracy and reform in South Africa, I suffer. That is your part. You are part of it. What is this bullshit? What is this Commonwealth pressure against South Africa? Do you know what it means to my son God? It means I must close down in 6 months. Maggie, is that why I made you Prime Minister of Britain? Maggie, you are getting soft, Maggie, damn it. You are getting soft to finish.
In Popomeni, the small township where strikers live, preparations for a cultural celebration are underway. After 2 years on strike, workers from die castings in Pinetown have been reinstated. Today, they will celebrate their victory with the Samco strikers.
Tina Soyota, Ingat, Tina Soyota, Ingat, Tina Soyota, Iusa, Msawaras, Wabasebenzi, Iusa, Msawaras, Wabasebenzi, Ingat, Tina Soyota, Ingat, Tina Soyota, Ingat, Tina Soyota.
Sees the way. Judah sees the way. I'm not Calaway, but Amanda. Thank you.
Working class culture often reflects the ideas and debates that are current in the liberation movement. At COSATU's Second National Congress, one of the most important debates was around the Freedom Charter and socialism.
Our long-term objectives.
Comrade, in our resolution, we have highlighted clearly why do we adopt the charter. We adopt the charter not just as a paper or just as a document. We see it as a program of our struggle.
We are urging COSATU to adopt the Freedom Charter and also to commit itself to building socialism.
We have a destiny, comrades, and that is why we adopt the Charter as a base, comrade, of the democratic society that we need.
I think, Comrade Chair, it is quite a sensitive subject we are dealing with now. And it's also an important subject because it's determining the future of this federation.
It's to bring the charter to life, to get it into our lives. That's what's important, Comrade Chair.
To end COSATU's Second Congress, cultural workers from all over the country participated in a cultural rally.
Culture is about making images about ourselves that tells us more about our lives. It tells us about the details, about the patterns and the systems where we fit in, what makes us the people we are. And it also tells us about the people we'd like to be. And I think this is why working class culture is giving clearer direction to COSATU as an organization of the working class, but it will also carry this clearer direction and this clearer view of society to other organizations. Ultimately, what we are struggling for in our organizations and in culture is a much deeper understanding of democracy, deeper understanding of what it means to be human.
me like that today?
I'm cross. I'm unhappy. You know, you've been continuing with this strike of yours. We are the ones that must struggle in the house. There's hardly food for us to eat. What is going to happen? One of these days we'll be out of our house because there's no money coming in. You know, when our children get sick, there's no money for the doctors.
Just listen here. There is something about GM on the newspaper. GM workers return. This morning, the majority of the striking workers returned to their jobs to meet the ultimatum set by GM management. Those who have not returned will have to reapply. GM further indicates that 200 workers, new, that is kept, have applied for jobs in response to the advertisement set by GM management in last week's newspapers.
You see, others are going back to take your work. You better see that you also go back.
We were united until the bosses, the press, and the TV came to confuse us.
That's why our comrades went back to the factory. We know times are very hard. But what are conditions like inside the factory now? Management is still continuing to exploit us. Those inside the factory and those still on strike.
I said no reason why the people must move on their stand to go in there, because they are still going to suffer inside there also.
We know production is suffering, and we know they need our skills.
They panic, but they say they have enough people. Why they don't produce the production there?
We have set up street and area committees. Police have detained some of us, but this will not deter us. We are continuing to build our committees. We continue to hold meetings. We continue to act democratically. We stand by our demands. We have all learned that management does not protect workers. The state does not protect workers. Comrades, we must protect ourselves. Mine workers, metal workers, chemical workers, textile workers, construction workers. Our struggle today will be your struggle tomorrow. We must fight to protect our rights now. Disinvestment must harm profits. It must not harm workers. And these are to one. The victory for one. We shall win. Long live COSATU.
South Africa, comrades, you have two different cultures. I want to risk saying this, that we have a ruling class culture that is controlled by the capitalists and the racist rulers like the governments and other and bosses, of course. That is called a ruling class culture, a culture that is designed to stifle and suppress the working class and the working class elements, those people who want to change the situation, the setup, those people who want to make sure that oppression and exploitation ends in South Africa, then you have working class culture, which we are going to talk about now. The working class culture, the culture that comes from the people, the culture that says no to the exploitation, no to the oppression, but most the culture that expresses our situation, the nature of politics here in South Africa. There is a need, taking what happened during our Culture Day, for us to go on now to set up structures, to set up forums that will be able to accommodate our cultural creativity and initiative. We must start to formulate first the culture units, what we call a culture unit from the local point of view, from our local structures, so that in Joburg you have a culture local or a culture unit, in Durban, in Johannesburg, and ultimately wherever we have structures, wherever we have locals, you have these culture units.
I've seen countless horizons filled with crimson suns. I've seen dust settle over battlefields and rise again. I've seen graves of children who died before they lived. I've seen worlds without end. I'm the prisoner of my eyes. I've heard the leaders of stature and simplicity. I've heard the roar of gunfire bursting through my ears. I've heard the rattling of trains taking workers to the pits of slavery. I've heard freedom songs on the breath of the night wind. I've heard defiant slogans shouted above the thunder of Caspers. I'm a prisoner of my ears. From this liberation, this compelling freedom of sound and sight, I speak to you.